Everyone told me that forgiving someone instantly makes you the bigger person. But that night taught me the opposite. And by the time the clock struck midnight, 312 years of family tradition crumbled in one phone call that nobody in that hall saw coming. My name is Isolde Vrain, and I had spent 11 years perfecting the art of becoming invisible. Not the kind of invisible that poets write about, the dreamy, gossamer vanishing of a woman who floats through rooms leaving lavender in her wake. No, mine was the gritty, practiced invisibility of a woman who learns exactly when to lower her eyes, when to laugh at a joke she finds repulsive, when to refill a glass she was never offered in the first place. It was muscle memory by now. I could perform deference the way other women performed yoga, with precision, breath control, and a face that revealed absolutely nothing. The Vrains had money, not the quiet, embarrassed kind of money that apologizes for itself in sensible shoes. The kind of money that builds its own wing in a hospital and names it after a patriarch who once beat a mule to death for being slow. Kelvin's family had that money, and Kelvin had me, or believed he did, which I now understand is a very different thing. His mother, Marveth Vrain, was 71 years old and had never in her life encountered a sentence she could not weaponize. She was small and silk-clad and wore rings on fingers that should not, anatomically, have been able to support that much gold. She smelled of tuberose and of old grievance, the way certain houses smell of the previous owners, even after the walls have been repainted twice. She had decided the moment Kelvin brought me home, a girl from Reseda with a community college degree and a father who drove a refrigerated truck, that I was a stain she had not finished trying to scrub out. 11 years of marriage, and she had not relented once. But the night of the Vrain Centennial Banquet, the party celebrating 100 years of family legacy, 600 guests, a ballroom in the Crestmore Hotel that had been rented for $180,000, was supposed to be different. Kelvin had promised. He had said it in the kitchen that morning while I adjusted his cufflinks, his breath warm and earnest near my temple. Isolde, tonight is about us. All of us. I'll be beside you the whole night. I had looked at him and wanted to believe it so badly that I pressed the belief flat inside me like a flower between book pages, hoping it would dry into something permanent. I wore a dress the color of deep ocean water, the kind of blue that looks black in dim light and startles you when it catches a chandelier. My hair was up. My heels were 3 inches. I had spent 4 hours becoming the version of myself that Marveth could not openly mock. And I had believed, God help me, I had believed, that I had finally built the armor high enough. The banquet hall smelled of lilies and roasted duck and the specific anxiety of people who have hired 16-piece orchestras. Round tables filled the room like a constellation you could only read from above. 600 people, and I knew perhaps 20 of them by their honest faces rather than their social faces. The rest were Vrain satellites, lawyers, donors, cousins twice removed who owned shipping companies in countries they'd only visited for tax purposes. Marveth found me at 7:42. I know the exact time because I had just checked my phone under the tablecloth, wondering if my younger sister Priel had texted back about my mother's appointment. She hadn't. And then I felt the particular chill that Marveth brought with her, the drop in temperature that preceded her the way a cold front precedes a storm. She sat beside me, not across, beside, close enough that I could hear the click of her rings against the wine glass she picked up from the table. Someone else's glass, she didn't care. She took a slow sip and looked at the room with the satisfaction of a woman surveying territory she has already conquered. Your posture is always a little defeated, she said pleasantly. Have you considered that the problem might be structural? I said nothing. Muscle memory. Kelvin tells me you've been thinking about taking a course. She turned to look at me with those amber eyes that had always reminded me of old resin, beautiful in the right light, suffocating if you were trapped inside. Interior design? Something decorative. The pause was precise. It suits you, I think. Something that takes what already exists and rearranges it. You've always been better at that than at creating anything original. I picked up my water glass, set it down. You know what I find remarkable? She continued, and her voice never rose above a dinner party murmur, which was the cruelest part. No one around us could tell that anything was happening. My son is the most extraordinary man in this room, perhaps in this city, and every year I watch him shine a little less brightly because he is accommodating. Your word for it, I believe. A life that does not quite fit the shape of what he deserves. Marveth, my voice came out quieter than I intended. Tonight is meant to be a celebration. Of course, she smiled, which is precisely why I'm speaking now, before the speeches begin, so that you have time to reflect. She set the wine glass down and touched my wrist with two cold fingers. You've had 11 years, Isolde. 11 years to become what this family needs. And you remain charming, I'm sure, to certain people, but fundamentally unchanged. She leaned just slightly closer. A refrigerator truck, she said softly, and the words landed like a thumb pressed into a bruise. That's the blood you brought into this name. A refrigerator truck. And something in me, something that had been compressed for 11 years under the weight of all that practiced silence, made a small, nearly inaudible sound like ice giving way. Your blood, I said quietly, built a hospital wing to avoid a corruption charge. So let's not talk about what people bring into rooms, Marveth. The silence between us lasted perhaps 3 seconds. Then she stood. And in a voice that was somehow, impossibly, just loud enough for the 6 nearest tables, the skill of a woman who had spent decades knowing exactly how far sound traveled in a ballroom, she said, with the precision of a surgeon who has located the exact nerve, Calvin, your wife has something she'd like to say to me. I did not see him cross the room. I only know that one moment I was sitting and the next he was there, and the look on his face was not the face of the man who had adjusted his cufflinks in my kitchen that morning and promised me, beside you all night. It was the face of a man who had, in some catastrophic internal calculation, already chosen the verdict before hearing the testimony. Isolde. His voice was low and strained. She called my father, not here. Calvin, she said. I said, not here. And then, in front of 600 people, in front of the Vrain family centennial banquet, in front of the 16-piece orchestra that had just paused between songs, he raised his hand and he brought it across my cheek. The sound was small, the room was large, but sound travels differently when the room has gone completely silent. I did not fall. I want to say that clearly because it matters. I did not fall. My heel caught on the chair leg behind me and I stumbled. But I caught the table, and I stood there with my hand pressed to my face and my ocean blue dress and 600 pairs of eyes arranged around me like a theater in the round. And I understood, in the clean, terrible clarity that only arrives after a shock, that my life had just split into the part before and the part after. And the part before was already gone. Someone near the back made a sound, a woman. I don't know who she was. It was a sharp, inhaled sound, the kind that contains an entire opinion without a single word. Marveth was very still. Calvin looked at his own hand as if it had acted without his permission, which perhaps on some level it had. His face had gone the color of old wax. Isolde. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I wiped it slowly, the way you wipe something that deserves a witness. I picked up my clutch from the table. And this is the part that nobody in that room expected, not even me. I walked to the edge of the dance floor where the signal was better, and I found my mother's name in my phone. Not my lawyer, not my sister Priel, not my closest friend Daxa, who would have immediately driven across the city in her ancient Volvo and made things far worse in the most loyal possible way. My mother. Her name in my contacts was listed simply as Mom. No emoji, no last name, just that word, which I had typed in when I was 19 and had never changed because some words you don't need to decorate. She answered on the second ring. Isolde. She always said my name first, before anything else, as if confirming I was real. As if the most important fact of any phone call was that I existed. Mom. I stopped there for a moment in the narrow corridor outside the ballroom, the sounds of the Vrain centennial muffled by one door and 11 years of trying. Mom, please come. There was a pause of perhaps 4 seconds. I'm already in the car, she said. I had not told her where I was. I had not told her what had happened. She did not ask. She had been waiting, I understood then, not this specific night, but for the general shape of this night, the way certain mothers wait for the call that explains every other call, every Sunday visit where their daughter's smile was just slightly too careful, every Christmas where the conversation changed whenever the husband's family name came up. "I'll be there in 40 minutes," she said. "Go somewhere with a door that locks." I found the hotel's second-floor lounge, a place with low amber lighting and a bar staffed by a man named Orvith, who had the face of someone who had heard everything and judged none of it. I ordered club soda with lime. I sat in a deep chair. I let the 40 minutes pass. I did not cry, which surprised me. I had expected to cry. I had cried at smaller things: a ruined dinner, a canceled trip, an offhand comment about my handwriting at a Vrain Christmas table. But here in the amber light of the second-floor lounge, watching the ice melt in my club soda, I felt something I had not expected: clarity. The pure, unencumbered clarity of a woman who has finally been given, by the very people who wronged her, the exact evidence she had always told herself she was misreading. "You weren't misreading it," the clarity said. "You were just hoping." My phone lit up with Calvin's name 4 times in 30 minutes. I watched it light up and go dark. Watched it light up and go dark. On the 5th call, I turned it face down. She arrived in 52 minutes, not 40, because there was road construction on the bridge. I knew it was her before I saw her because I heard the specific cadence of her heels on the marble lobby floor. She walked like a woman who had been in a hurry for 63 years and had made peace with the fact that the hurry was now simply her resting pace. Nadine Sorrell was 63 years old. She was 5'4" in flat shoes and 5'6" tonight because she had, apparently, put on heels to come get me, which told me everything about what kind of rescue this was going to be. She wore a camel-colored coat I had never seen before. Her hair was silver and pulled back without apology. She found me in 14 seconds. She sat across from me. She looked at my face. Her eyes moved to the mark on my cheek, which was fading but still there if you knew what you were looking for. "Tell me," she said. I told her. She listened the way she had always listened, which was completely, without finishing my sentences, without interjecting her reaction, without the particular crime of people who listen only long enough to locate the moment they can begin speaking. She listened until I stopped, and then she was quiet for a moment. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Known what?" "That this was going to be the night." I thought about it. "Since this morning," I said. "Maybe longer." She nodded as if this confirmed something she had calculated years ago. She reached into her coat pocket and placed on the low table between us a small, folded piece of paper. "What is this?" "A phone number," she said. "I've had it for 6 years. A woman named Fessily Orvain. She's the best family attorney in this state. She does not do mediations. She does not do, let's see if we can work this out. She does the thing that needs to be done when the thing that needs to be done is done." She looked at me steadily. "I didn't give it to you before because it wasn't mine to give. You had to decide." I looked at the folded paper. "Did you always know this was going to happen?" "No," my mother said honestly. "I hoped I was wrong, but I kept the number." The orchestra in the Vrain Centennial had by now resumed playing. I could hear it faintly through the floor, something with a slow, waltz-like rotation, the kind of music that does not know or care what has happened in the ballrooms above and below it, the kind that simply continues. I picked up the paper. "I have some savings," I said. "Not much, not Vrain money, but enough to start." "You also have me," she said, "and Priel, and Daxa, who I already texted, by the way, and who is extremely prepared to be unhelpfully furious on your behalf, which sometimes helps." I laughed. It was a real laugh, not a Vrain banquet laugh. It came from somewhere low and genuine and felt like the first honest thing my body had done in 11 years. "What do I do tonight?" I asked. "Tonight you sleep in your old room," she said. which I have never rented out or converted to a sewing room or done anything sensible with, because I always suspected you would need it again. She stood up and held out her hand. Not to help me up, I was capable of standing, just to hold. Tomorrow we make the call. I took her hand. I want to be precise about what happened next because precision matters when you are trying to describe the moment a life reconstitutes itself. We did not storm the ballroom. I did not deliver a speech. There was no confrontation in front of the 600 guests, no operatic departure down a grand staircase. We walked out through the lobby, past Orvith the bartender who gave me a small nod that I chose to interpret as solidarity, and through the revolving door and into the night air, which was cool and carried the smell of rain that had not arrived yet, but was building somewhere to the north. My mother's car was a 12-year-old Buick she had driven since my father passed. The passenger seat had a dent in the armrest from where he used to rest his elbow on long trips. I sat in it. She drove. The radio was on low, some station playing music from the 80s that neither of us acknowledged. I held the folded paper with Thessaly Orvain's number. I thought about Calvin, not with anger precisely, which is what people expect you to say, with something sadder and more complicated. I thought about the man I had married and the man he had gradually become under the pressure of his mother's expectations, and I wondered when the distance between those two men had grown too large for love to bridge. I thought it had probably been years ago. I thought we had both known in our adjacent silences and had chosen not to name it. Naming ends things. We had both, for different reasons, preferred the uneasy continuity. Until tonight, when he named it for both of us with his hand. I called Thessaly Orvain the next morning at 8:51. She answered with the brisk certainty of someone who has already reviewed the file, which of course she hadn't, but that was the quality of her. This woman my mother had found 6 years ago and kept in a folded piece of paper like a contingency plan for the worst version of a hope. Within 40 minutes, she had scheduled a consultation. Within the week, she had filed the first documents. Marveth Vrain called me once, from a number I did not have saved. She left a voicemail that lasted 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I know the duration because I clocked it before deleting it unheard. Calvin called Priel, then Daxa, trying to find a door I had left open. There were no open doors. My sister and my best friend were, if anything, more architecturally committed to the closure than I was. The legal process took 14 months. During those 14 months, I enrolled in the interior design course. Not because Marveth had suggested it, and not despite that she had, but because I had wanted it before she ever said the word, and had quietly abandoned it in the long process of becoming invisible. I took it with a woman named Farron Alt, who taught three-dimensional color theory with the intensity of someone who believes that the way you arrange a room is a moral statement. I learned things I did not have words for before. I learned that space is not what fills a room. Space is what a room makes available. On the day the divorce was finalized, I was at my mother's kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a sketchbook open to a floor plan for a small apartment I had been hired to redesign. My first paid project, which Daxa had found for me by aggressively recommending me to everyone she knew. My phone showed the notification from Thessaly's office at 9:44 in the morning. I looked at it. I set the phone down. I finished the cup of coffee. Then I picked up the pencil and continued the floor plan. I think about the slap sometimes, not obsessively, not the way trauma creates its own weather system inside you. Just occasionally, the way you think about the last day you lived somewhere. You didn't know it was the last day, and then it was, and then it became the beginning of somewhere else. I think about Marveth's refrigerator truck delivered with such careful, tuberose-scented cruelty, and I think about how she was trying to tell me I came from something small. She was not wrong about the truck. My father drove it for 26 years. He drove it through 2 recessions and 1 cancer scare, and the year my sister had surgery, and the year I graduated, and the year my mother's furnace died in January and needed replacing within 48 hours. That truck paid for all of it. That truck was not small. That truck was the exact size of a life built without a hospital wing named after a dead patriarch. It was, it occurs to me now, precisely the right size. I still live close enough to my mother that I could walk if I needed to. I don't need to. I have a car now, a small one, nothing remarkable, no one's family name on the deed. But I could walk. I know the way. I have always known the way back. The Vrain Centennial photographs exist somewhere on a professional photographer's hard drive. 600 smiling people in a ballroom full of lilies and roasted duck, and a 16-piece orchestra playing music for a legacy that was, by 11 p.m. that night, already beginning to mean something different than it had at 7. In none of those photographs, I imagine, is there any evidence of what happened. But I was there, and I wiped my tears, and I made one call. And an hour later, or 52 minutes to be exact, my mother walked through a revolving door in a camel-colored coat with heels she had put on deliberately because she knew what kind of night this was. And she sat across from me and she said, "Tell me." And I did. That was enough. That has always been enough. If this story moves something in you, hit like and subscribe. More truth like this every week.